Are you a photographer or videographer who's always on the move and wondering if the new MacBook Air M4 is really worth the upgrade from the M3? Well, I've tested both the M3 with 16GB of RAM and the new M4 with 24GB of RAM. And today I'll share everything you need to know, especially if you use Lightroom Classic for editing photos or Final Cut Pro X like I do for videos. Ciao, I'm Stefano Casati, destination wedding photographer and videographer, working between Italy and California. I travel a lot and I work light and always need a laptop that is powerful, silent and easy to carry. Let me give you a little background. I started with a couple of MacBook Pros 13 inches back in 2012 and 2014. Then I upgraded to the 15 inches MacBook Pro with i7 and 16 gigs of RAM with dedicated graphic card in 2016, and it was a very powerful machine. Then in 2020 I switched to the MacBook Air M1 with 16 gigs of RAM, and honestly that changed everything. It gave me roughly the same power as the 15 Pro that I had, but in a much smaller and lighter body, with a battery that lasts all day. Since then, I've used MacBook Air M2 16 inches, then I upgraded to the MacBook Air M3 16 inches, and now with the M4 24GB of RAM. So today I'm giving you my review after testing these machines in real jobs, such as weddings, engagement shootings, and commercial shoots. Why this matter for creators? If you edit full weddings or create cinematic videos, choosing the right machine is important, not just for performance, but also for size, heat, and battery life. So both the M3 and the M4 MacBook Airs are fanless, super lightweight and great for traveling. But there are some key differences that can affect your workflow, especially if you're working from the road. Lightroom Classic, performance test. So let's start with photography. Personally, I use Lightroom Classic to edit full weddings with RAW files from my Sony a7 IV and a7C II, which are 33 megapixels. So both machines work very well for importing, culling, and basic edits. But when it comes to editing a lot of photos like 800 or 1000, using a lot of AE masks, for example, or exporting big galleries, then the M4 with 24 gigs feels a little bit faster, especially when I'm running Lightroom, and with the 24 gigs of RAM, batch editing is quicker and I still can use other apps in the background without any lag. Now, the big question, does it overheat? And the answer is yes, both of them. Like every MacBook Air, it doesn't have a fan, so when you push it hard, it gets hot and slows down. But there's something interesting here. So even when the M4 thermal throttles, it's still about the same speed as the M3 when it's fresh. What does under stress mean? Well, like when you're exporting more than 100 or 200 images, for example, or you're generating previews for 4,000 or 5,000 images on Lightroom, or editing a large shoot for hours without any break, especially in warm room or outside. Well, after this intense task, both the M3 and the M4 cools down quickly and they work fine again for normal use. Export test. So to see the real difference, I'm going to export a batch of photos from both machines and let's see what are the results. So we are going to export now 200 photos, same settings, go. The efficiency core are running faster compared to the M3 overall, whether the performance core are running slower, interestingly, but as you can see the export time is much faster on this one. And as you can see, the amount of RAM used is a little bit different. As you can see here, Lightroom is using more RAM. And it's done. So the M4 Air Took 2 minutes and 10 seconds to export 200 photos. And we are done. Stop. So 3 minutes and 53 seconds, which is almost double as the M4. Final Cut Pro X. Video editing. Now let's talk video editing. I personally use Final Cut Pro X with 4K 10-bit footage from my Sony cameras, both in H.264 and H.265. I often add LUTs on top of them and film grain, sharpening and titles. And the M3 is fine for simple edits, for example a YouTube video with basic cuts and color grading. But once the timeline gets a little bit longer or more complex, you'll notice a little bit of stuttering and it's a little bit slower in response. Whether the M4 feels much smoother, faster playback, and even quicker in export. I notice overall a little bit less overheating in Final Cut Pro compared to Lightroom with both machines. But the bigger problem is not the heat, but to be honest is how powerful the machine is for editing complex projects. Let me dig more in details here. If you keep things simple, like a single LUT basic editing, it runs very well, both the M3 and the M4. But when you stack many layers on top of each other, add heavy effects, add film grain or halation, work on long sequences, for example, like for weddings, then you need to lower the playback quality for sure, or disable some effects during editing. Another thing which is very interesting is that RAM is super important here. With 16 gigs, it fills up very quickly and you start getting stutters. With 24 gigs instead, you have a much smoother experience. So with the GPU, on the other hand, you cannot upgrade that much. You have a maximum of 10 cores, which is okay, but is not enough for editing with heavy effects in real time. If you do that kind of work, you'll need for sure a MacBook Pro with more GPU cores, like the M4 Pro or even the Max. Export tests. So this year Apple updated the video encoders, so a small jump in export time is due also to this reason. But let me export the same project with both machines and see the results. Okay, so I've created a basic timeline, is 2 minutes and 30 seconds. I multiplied the same footage multiple times. I added a few effects, audio effects, and also a little bit of layers for correction. So as you can see, we have one LUT applied and 3 layers of correction plus sharpening applied. I added also a couple of titles at the beginning and at the end, 1 layer of song. So this is like what could be a simple highlight video, maybe something like that, or a simple project, not too intensive, but not too simple either. Let's see when we go to export this file, what happens. I'm exporting right now in H.264. Okay, and the difference is 4 seconds for these two projects, so it's very little difference. Let's go with another export and see how it goes. Okay, now I've doubled the timeline, now it's 5 minutes, and I added on top another LUT, so we have 2 LUTs plus the basic color adjustment. And let's go with the export, but this time we're going to compress directly to MP4 through the compressor setting, and let's see how it goes. So GPU is basically maxed out for both. CPU is running faster, interestingly, on the M3. They're using it differently though. And for RAM, almost the same. We have more available, of course, on with 24 gigs. Okay, we're done. So the MacBook M4 took 5 minutes and 58 seconds, whether the M3 took 7 minutes and 30 seconds. Let's just check now the battery life. And we can see that the M4 is 96, whether the M3 is 90%. So for this task, exporting 200 photos, exporting 1 2-minute video, and exporting a 5 minutes video, it took 10% of battery out of the M3 and just 4% out of the M4. Just keep in mind that this is a 1 year old computer, whether this is just fresh, new, I just bought it, so there is a chance, oh, and it got to 89. So there is a chance that after 1 year, the battery degrades a little bit. Bonus tip here, edit first and grade later. So just use one LUT during editing phase and add all the final color layers, grain annihilation, all at the end, when you're just previewing one frame at a time. Another option is using, of course, proxies, which makes editing super smooth, but for me the time that it takes to generate them is a little bit too long. So I usually just lower the preview quality and turn off some layers of color grading, and that is going to do the work. Portability. For someone like me who travels a lot and works light, weight and silence are a big deal. So both the M3 and M4 are completely silent because they're fanless, very much lightweight, around 1.24 kilo or 2.73 pounds. And about the battery life, in regular use there is not big difference. All MacBook Air last a full day of normal work or half day of mixed tasks. But during heavy processing, heavy export, like photos exporting or video rendering, you can expect roughly 2 to 3 hours. Who should choose what? Well, go with the M3 16 if you mostly edit photos. Your work is with a smaller session, or you can use smart previews. You do video editing, but only for short timelines and with simpler effects. On the other hand, you can choose the M4 with 24 gigs of RAM. If you do both photo and video professionally, you edit full weddings and large photo galleries, and you need maximum performance, but still you want to travel light. So on the other hand, go for a MacBook Pro or even Macs if you want zero compromise. You often export huge galleries or work on complex video projects every day. In that case, you need more GPU power, and if you don't care about the weight or price, it's a good choice. Personally, I stick with the Airline because it's the best balance between power, weight, and price. And my strategy, I upgrade every year selling my previous MacBook, and this way I always have a new battery, fresh performance, warranty coverage, and always the latest chip. But yes, fanless design and limited GPU cores will always be the Air weak point. So, are you using a MacBook Air or a Pro? Let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear what setup works for you the best, especially if you are a creator on the go like me. And if you want to see how I shoot a full wedding with my favorite camera settings, please check out this video right here. Ciao e a presto!